I'm so glad that you're joining me tonight on this webinar, The 5 Biggest Buyer Mistakes. This is Know-It-All Nick. He'll be spending the next 30 minutes or so with us going through this. And rather than looking and feeling like him with your fingers crossed and looking terrified, this is a little more how I'd like you to feel at the end of it, that you know how to avoid them. That's the whole point. Well, I'm Kathy Schmidt. I'm the broker and owner of Schmidt Realty Group, and I'll be hosting tonight's webinar. And again, you don't have to feel like Nick. You can take charge of the process and learn how to avoid them, be thumbs up, and tonight I'm going to give you the tools to do just that. Just before we get started, just so I have an idea of who is on the webinar tonight, do me a favor. There's a little chat box there, and there's some little tools and icons for you in terms of webinars. If you can raise your hand, if you can hear me, please, that'd be great. It looks like a little mitten. And if you can just, again, pop your name in the chat box also. That lets me know that, you know, you're comfortable with the process, and I can see that you know how to get your questions answered and all of that. And if you're joining me on a recording here, just bear with us for just about a minute while we just get a couple of little housekeeping things out of the way, and then we'll be right into the content. At the end of the webinar, I'll share with you how you can get a copy of this offer timeline for buyers. Our clients love this. We share it with them at our buyer consultations. It goes over the timeline of when an offer is written, negotiated, accepted, etc., and when all the money flows, deposits, down payments, how that all works. Our clients really appreciate having this offer timeline. So I'll share with you how you can get that for sure, and I'll take some time for some Q&A at the end as well. So, who am I and what gives me the right to chat about all of this? Well, I am the broker of Schmidt Realty Group. I've been in real estate now for over 20 years. I've worked with hundreds of buyers, hundreds of sellers. I coach and mentor my team. I love what I do. I teach at the Realtor Association of Edmonton. I speak at conferences sharing knowledge that I've gained over the years. I love to teach, love to share information. So that's my passion, and that's really what this is all about for me tonight, is helping you to have information that I really believe is going to serve you well. Do you know, I remember my husband and I buying our very first house, and when I think back to what we didn't know, I just cringe, and I don't want that to be you. You know, whether this is your first purchase or maybe you've bought before but you want to make sure it's a smoother experience, the information in tonight's webinar I think is going to really, really help you with that. I just want to make sure that you're as well equipped as you possibly can be. You know, I love what I do, and I've had so many wonderful experiences in this profession, and I've been very involved with the Realtor Association of Edmonton over the years. I had a marvelous honor given to me a number of years ago, being Realtor of the Year in 2011. And that meant so much to me because I love this profession so much, and that award came to me from my colleagues. So that was a tremendous, tremendous honor. And really, at this point in my career, I've just amassed so much experience and information and knowledge, I just want to share it with more people. So this information I'm going to share with you is information we share with our clients when we first meet with them, and information that I know will set you up to avoid those 5 biggest mistakes and have a great experience with your purchase. So again, just so I have a bit of an idea of who's on the webinar tonight, if you wouldn't mind just raising your hand if you've been on a webinar before, that would be marvelous. Would much appreciate that. Okay, see some hands going up. That's great. So we've got some online learners here. And I see a few people not raising their hands. So welcome to your first webinar. That's fantastic. And as you go through, if you've got questions, definitely pop them in the chat box. I'll be watching for that. Or if you need any help with anything to do with the webinar, if you're having trouble hearing something. And if you notice that maybe a slide isn't moving forward as you think it should, please let me know. Once in a while there's a technical glitch, and I sure appreciate it if anybody on the webinar would let me know if there's any difficulty on your end. So, what stresses you out about buying a house? I want you to think about that. And if you're watching this as a recording, I want you to, again, grab a pen and paper and jot this down for yourself. And if you're live with me on the webinar, I'd really love it if you would pop that into a chat box. Again, this is all anonymous. No one can see who's posting what. And, so not to worry. And by the way, if you've got a dog that barks or anything like that, I can't hear that either, and neither can anybody else. You're all muted. So again, your questions are anonymous, but it's a chance for you to get your questions answered live. And I'd love to find out from you so I can tailor this to who's on the call today. What's worrying you most about buying a house? What's your biggest concern? Okay, I've got some things coming in here already. Finances, the money. Okay, yeah, that's a big concern for people. It's very understandable. Okay, not seeing enough houses. buying a house and wishing I would have bought something else. That's really valid, understandable. And again, we're really going to get into setting yourself up for a success experience so that doesn't happen. We call it buyer's remorse, and we never want to see a client of ours experience it. Okay. Oh, here's one. Yeah, I've got to sell my house first. What do I do? You know, we've got a whole other webinar on that topic. It's quite in depth. But the bottom line is, if you currently own a house, you have to ask yourself really quickly, what would keep me awake more at night? Temporarily owning 2 houses or temporarily owning none? Now, ideally, you know, it's nice and smooth and it works perfectly, so you move from one house seamlessly to the other. But, you know, those are some things to think about. That's the kind of thing we could definitely have a phone chat about, or a quick coffee about, or you could check in with me and see when the next webinar is going to be on that topic as well. Any questions that you might want to ask after the webinar comes up, you can always email learn@weselledmonton.com, learn@weselledmonton.com, and we'll definitely get back to you. Very, very happy to do that. The bottom line is, whatever is stressing you and concerning you about buying right now, I just don't want to see you let your life be held back by fears. Real estate should serve your life, not the other way around, right? So what is it you want to do? Where is it you want your life to take you? How do you want your life to be on a daily basis? If that involves a move, then let's help you gain some comfort and some knowledge so you can make that move and get to where you want to be. So let's get started getting you the answers you need. Grab a pen and paper. We should be about 30 minutes plus or so to go through this information today. And I really hope that you can settle in and just dig in and focus on this information, because I truly believe it's going to help you make smart real estate choices and have a much, much more fun experience with your property purchase. Okay, well, let's get into it. What is big mistake number 1? Waiting too long to buy. So here's Know-It-All Nick. He's got the idea that he understands how real estate works better than anybody, and he knows that, you know, he's always better off to save up a bigger down payment. Always. And he's convinced that waiting could never cost him any money. Well, the truth of it is, Nick doesn't have all the facts. Sure, saving up a big down payment can be really, really smart. You want to be prudent. You want to be, you know, really wise with your money. And again, you don't want to overextend. But do you have all the facts? You know, that's really what this whole webinar series is all about, is equipping consumers like you to have the information you need so that you can make really smart decisions, the ones that are really going to benefit you and your family. So in some cases, buying quickly can be smart. In some cases, waiting can be smart. But how do you really decide? And that's what I want to share with you right now. Now, if you're not a numbers person, I have some friends who are kind of mathophobics. And the truth of it is here, you know, this information is really not as complicated as it might look. So do stick with me. If you're someone, when you see the numbers, you panic a little bit, just stick with me on this. I'm going to walk you through it. So pretty simple to see that when prices are rising, you know, you do want to buy as soon as you can, obviously, because you can see that you're really racing to catch up. And people tend to think of that as a market where maybe, you know, you've got 10% price increases and that's, you know, a hot market. What about when prices are falling? Well, it could make sense to wait and save if prices are falling, if you're buying purely, you know, on a financial decision. But are you okay with really putting your life plans on hold purely based on the market? Where do you actually really want to be living, and what's that worth to you? You know, I'm a firm believer that real estate should serve your life, not the other way around. So I think it's really important to stop and ask yourself, what would it be worth to me? What's it worth to our family to have me living closer to work? So I have shorter commute time. We have more family time in the evenings. What's it worth to be maybe in a situation where you can actually, you know, bike to work or use public transit? What's it worth to you to have a property where you can actually have family come and stay with you if you have family out of town? All those intangibles, that's the real value. That's the stuff of life. So you have to weigh that in as well as looking at the financial aspect of it. So let's walk through, though, the financial side of it. Let's assume a modest price increase of 2.5%. So a typical bungalow in Edmonton might be around $400,000, depending on the neighborhood and condition. So 2.5% increase would add $10,000 to the purchase price of that house. But do you realize that means you would need to save $833 a month just to break even, just to keep up, and you're not living where you want to live? So imagine you thought you're going to set aside, you know, $1,000 a month towards your down payment over the next 12 months. Well, that's really more like setting aside maybe $200 a month, because the rest is just helping you to keep up with the market. And again, then you're not living where you want to live. So again, typically people think about rising prices as being big numbers, double digits, 10%, and massive increases. Even a small increase like 2.5% can make quite a difference in terms of how much you would need to be setting aside a month to be keeping up. Now, the good news, if you're the homeowner and you bought that property at the beginning of the year, that $10,000 increase in equity is yours. I mean, sure, you'd have to sell the home to actually realize it, but most people don't buy their home that they're living in with the idea of, selling it in 12 months and making a profit at flipping it. People are buying a home to make it literally their home, the place where, they come home at the end of the day, their landing base, the place that they launch their life from. And most of our clients are usually in their homes for 3, 4, 5 years at least, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. Life can change, but again, if there is an adjustment in the market and prices do soften a little bit, unless you're selling, you're enjoying your home. And I think that's where those intangibles really come into play. So I want you just to have this in mind, to be thinking about those intangibles. What's it really worth to you to be living where you want to be, and what you would need to be saving to keep up with the market, even if there's a modest increase. And again, also think about when you think you might be moving. If you have a good possibility of maybe moving to, say, Toronto in the next 12 months, and you're not sure, what's going to be happening with that, maybe now isn't the time for you to buy. That's where you want to sit down, talk with your family, talk with your realtor about that, and come up with a really smart, strategic decision based on the facts and what's happening in your life and also what's happening in the market. But again, real estate should serve your life, not the other way around. And of course, if you are waiting and saving, you are helping someone buy their real estate. It's just that it's not you, it's your landlord. Again, how much of your rent check goes towards your financial future and how much of it goes towards, your landlord's financial future. So things to think about. Again, renting can definitely make sense. You want to sit down and really make a smart choice about what makes sense for you in your particular situation, and your realtor and your financial advisor can really help you walk through that choice. So let's move on to big mistake number 2. So what's mistake number 2? Not setting an achievable goal. So here's Know-It-All Nick. Hey, I'm a patient guy. Just call me when you find the property, okay? No worries. I got all the time in the world. Well, I did want to move sometime this decade. You could wait forever if your goal isn't realistic and if your goal isn't achievable. So what's the very first thing you need to do to make sure you've got an achievable goal? Well, you need to look exactly how much do you really have to spend. And you need to get properly pre-qualified. What do I mean by that? Many times I'll hear buyers say, oh yeah, I'm pre-approved. And my team and I, we're going to say to you, if you were to say that to us, I'd simply say to you, that's great. Good for you. You've made a good first start. Can I ask you, did you actually meet with a lender? Did you have an in-depth phone interview with a lender? Did your lender ask for specific information? Did your lender ask to see tax returns, proof of employment? Did your lender ask for permission to pull your credit bureau history? If the answer is no to those things, then what you've got is an indication of maybe what you could buy based on the income you told the lender that you have and based on the debt you told the lender you have. Nothing's been verified. That is not a pre-approval for you to go out and think you've got $300,000 to go spend on a house. You've got to get pre-qualified properly. You've got to do that. People don't like to sit down and bear all the information about their finances, but you're going to have to do it sooner or later if you're going to buy a property. Wouldn't it be better to do it up front? Even if you find out there's a couple of hiccups and you might have to wait 6 months to buy to clear off a couple of things in your credit. Well, now you can create a plan with your lender and make that happen. If you didn't know you needed to do that, you're just going to be setting yourself up for frustration. We want to set you up for success. So make sure you're either having an in-depth phone conversation or meeting face-to-face, and that your lender is asking you for that information, tax returns, verification of employment, all those sorts of things, credit bureau, etc. There'd be nothing worse than having your offer accepted, spending money on your inspection, spending money on having the condominium documents reviewed, getting all excited and then finding out you've got a wrinkle in your financing. So deal with it up front. Next step in setting an achievable goal. This is something that I created for our team to use with our buyers to help you create a really achievable goal for yourself. Again, your goal is personal. Your goal is something for you. It doesn't matter to me what you purchase so long as it fits with your needs and it matches what you want. I will be, or someone on my team would be saying to you, hey, we know you had a goal in mind. Does this really fit with that? We might bring you back to that if we think you're, maybe getting off of your target. But if you change your mind mid-course, that's going to be your choice. So grab your pen here and make some notes. This 3P model is so helpful. It's super simple. So here's the 3 Ps. Price, kind of obvious. What's your budget? Place, neighborhood for sure. But where in the neighborhood is that property located? Again, is that a quiet cul-de-sac location? Are you okay being on a busy road? Property. That is the type of property, house or condo, the style. Is it a bungalow? Is it a 2-story? The age, the condition. Is it upgraded? That's the house itself. So price, place, and property. Here's what we want to make sure happens here. We want to make sure that things line up. Now in this example, we've got a situation where the price and the type of house that this buyer is looking for matches. See how it overlaps? But where they want it doesn't. So as an example, let's say I had a client that said, I want a renovated character home, bungalow or semi-bungalow, that'd be great. I can spend up to $500,000. Great. That's possible. Oh, by the way, I would like that to be in Glenora. That's probably going to be a little bit tight because property values, land values alone in Glenora are so high. So do you see where I'm going with this? Your budget and your property might line up, but where you want it might not. Now, we might be able to then say, well, what about if we looked for that maybe, what about North Glenora? What about maybe Park Allen? What other neighborhoods could we look at where you can get that character home you like in the price range that suits you? Or what about another example where you might say, I can spend around, $450 to $550. Okay. And I love Rutherford. Wonderful. Now what I want in a house is a renovated character house. Well, here's the thing. If you've driven through Rutherford, it's a relatively new neighborhood. You're not going to find a renovated character house. And that's an extreme example, but I'm just trying to give you the idea of what we need to have happen here. We need these 3 things to all line up. By you taking the time up front to think about this, and by us walking you through this process, can you see how this will save you time and stress and have you have an achievable goal from the outset? So here's how we're going to do it. There is a simple way for us to test this out and see if you've got an achievable goal. Might seem a little counterintuitive, but here's the question we're going to ask. What has sold recently that you would have bought if you've been in the market? So, let's say you come to us and you say, well, I really want that renovated character house. Okay, and let's say, I really do want it in Glenora. Okay, we're going to exclude price, and we're going to go back and look at solds. Going to ideally look back about 3 months, go back further if we need to, and see, even in the last year, what has sold that's a renovated character home in Glenora. That when you see those pictures and you see where it is, you think, yep, that's the house for me. I would have bought that. When we find that, we're then going to look and see what did it sell for. That's going to show you very concretely where the market is at. Now you might say, oh, I'm kind of got some sticker shock here. I thought that might be around 500,000. I see it's about like 8. Okay, now you have some choices. You can increase your budget, so you can change the price. Or we could change the place. Maybe you say, okay, maybe it's not Glenora. Let's look in North Glenora. Let's look in Park Allen. So again, what we're doing is we're saying, what would you have bought? What is reasonable to expect to be able to find? If there is nothing that suits, then we're going to have to make some changes. Does that make sense? But what if we find, yeah, good news, there's properties here that I absolutely would have bought. Oh, this is fantastic. Then you know you've got an achievable goal that you can get really excited about. So that's the acid test that we're going to walk through. Again, it's going to save so much time and money in your part, because time is money. If the market's rising while you're waiting for the impossible to show up, it could be costing you money. Stress. I've even seen some buyers or heard stories of buyers who stepped out of the market completely because they were just so disappointed the market didn't have what they wanted. Truth is, they didn't have a reasonable search. They weren't looking for something that was ever going to come up. Make sense? So here's another question for you. How important is it to you to love the house at first sight? Just pop your answer there in the chat box. Absolutely. Gotta love it. Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. Jane, you're saying, yep, you loved your house at first sight. Okay, good. Stuart saying, Nope, didn't love it, but we renovated it and now we do. Okay, that's awesome. That's great. You've got a little bit of a, I might be able to love you if we gave you a little bit of TLC. Okay. And again, oh, someone's saying, no, not important. I'm an investor. Okay, very important. You got to love the numbers in that case. So let's look at that. Big mistake number 3, deciding purely on emotion. Emphasis on purely. Okay, so here's Know-It-All Nick. He says, I love quirky homes full of character. I don't want a cookie cutter house. How could that be wrong? Well, let me tell you a little story. I had a couple I was helping years ago buy a property. They fell in love with this house. It was very quirky, had lots of little levels up and down, and they were looking at having kids in the next number of years. It was also on a very busy street, and the layout was really unusual. Now, they loved it, and I said to them, listen, if this is the house you want, and you really decided, I will do my best to get it for you for the best price. May I ask a favor? Can we go and look at a few other properties that I think might be better in terms of resale? Because you've also shared with me you think you might be moving to Calgary for work in the next year to 2 years, and you might need to sell. So we went and looked at some other properties, and they ended up buying a property of similar size with a more traditional layout, quite close by, and they've lived there for years, had kids in that property. It suited them wonderfully well. And when I see them, we still laugh about the property that they almost bought. It's not that buying a quirky, unique house is always a bad idea. You just have to have your eyes open and realize that you're going to have to then find someone else who has the same taste as you. Can you count on the next buyer loving this house as much as you do? This is an example of an emotionally based decision to buy. And when the time comes to sell it, it could take longer, and you might not sell for what you hope for. Similarly, don't exclude a property just because you hate the wallpaper. That's an emotionally based decision not to buy. If the rest of this house actually is great and really suits you, and you just, can't stand the wallpaper in this bathroom and the mirror and some of the fixtures, you know what? Figure out what it's going to cost to change it. You might even say, listen, what if we just hired someone to come in before we even moved in and they stripped the wallpaper down, replaced the mirror, painted up. Maybe that's going to cost you $2,000 just for quick numbers. Let's say the price on this house is $375, and you think, okay, $2,000 to do this job. Let's think then, in our minds, as we're talking about this property and evaluating it compared to others, consider it priced at $377 in your mind. Don't exclude a whole house with a great location and a good layout just because you don't like the wallpaper. Figure out what would it cost to change it. It can be done before you move in. Budget for that. Build that into the total purchase. Don't exclude a great property purely on an emotional reaction either. And don't be pulled off target by a pretty place. Remember, you might have some really practical needs for space, like this little one. What if you're looking at a loft and you fall in love with it and you think, oh yeah, well, I want this loft. But what you started out looking for was a 2-bedroom condo because you're planning a family. Again, don't get pulled into falling in love with that hardwood floor and that loft with all the brick walls, and what you really need are just some regular walls because you need a nursery. Right? And again, that's what your realtor is going to help you do, is just to remind you of what you said was important. It's always going to be your decision, but what did you say was important and why? Let's pull that back and come back to that goal. Think longer term than a year or two if your budget allows, and make sure you don't get distracted by something shiny that doesn't really fill your bigger needs. When this little one comes along, you're going to be glad you got the walls, not just the hardwood floors and the cool brick ambiance of the loft. Important to think about the rest of your life. Bottom line is, whatever you do, don't miss out on the right house for any emotional reason. And one of those reasons is because you think you need to see 50 houses. If you've done your homework right, if you've thought about those 3 Ps, price, property, and place, and you've sat down and worked through it with us and said, how do we make sure that we've got an achievable target? So you've got an achievable target, you've done your proper pre-qualification, everything else. Do you need to see 50 houses? What if the first one actually matches everything you say you need? And your realtor sits down with you and you look at the comparables and you can say, yeah, it's falling right in line with where things have been selling. This makes good sense. You could miss a great property and wait for a good number of months longer to have that property come up again. Now, bottom line is, it's always going to be your choice. It should always be your choice what you do. And if you really need to look at more, you look at more. But I just want to open your mind to the idea that it could be that first one, because a lot of the homework you're doing in thinking about what you need and spending the time doing a proper consultation, with your realtor. I mean, for us, that takes between an hour and 2 hours, depending on how many questions that the buyer has and the time that you want to spend. If you do that homework properly up front, you're going to find the property more quickly. So we always remind our clients, give yourself permission to buy quickly if the right home is there for you. If it takes longer, and that's fine. So important that you just give yourself that permission. Mistake number 4, being unrealistic about all the costs. Real estate is a big financial, expenditure. It's a big commitment that you're making. And the last thing we want our clients to have is a surprise. So here's Know-It-All Nick saying, say what? You want me to pay for that? I didn't really budget for that. Well, we want to save you that embarrassment. We want to save you that sort of sticker shock of an unexpected cash outlay. So let's walk through the kind of expenses you can have. Of course, you see the house in the middle, right? See the contractor on top there with his little drawings and everything else, his measuring tape and whatnot. You can put into your mortgage some additional renovations. Might be flooring, might be a new kitchen. It's called purchase plus improvements. Your lender can walk you through that. So there's the house, there's that. You also see some realtors there. On occasion, your realtor fees can be included into your mortgage in a different way. Most of the time it's built right into the purchase when you're buying a property. But on occasion there can be an expenditure that gets put into your mortgage to pay the realtor directly if you're buying potentially a private sale. We would walk you through that sort of scenario in detail so that you'll know well up front before you even start to look how that could possibly happen and how that works so that you don't need to be worried about it. But the bottom line is those are the things that you can put into your mortgage. But look at that green circle all around. There's a lot of things there that are cash outlays. So let's start on the left. See where the checkbook is? Well, that's your deposit. You have to be ready and able to write a deposit that can be cashed when you're writing an offer. Usually that's for at least $5,000. What if you're buying a condo and in the offer there's, you're made aware in the condominium documents that there's going to be a special assessment, and what if you and the seller negotiate, you're going to have to pay that. Again, that's something that we as your realtors could protect you from so that you would know exactly and you can negotiate and say, no, you're not going to pay that. But that can come up, and so you need to know that could be an expense. Condo check. You're going to get copies of all the condominium documents if you're buying a condo, but a smart buyer is going to have those professionally reviewed by experts. It's going to cost you a few $100s. Property taxes. This is a big one, and a lot of buyers don't know about it. When you buy property, in almost every case, the seller has been paying property taxes in advance. Usually you owe the seller about 6 months worth of property taxes when you buy the property, and your lawyer's going to ask you to bring that money in about a week before possession date. What if you weren't expecting that? And whether the property taxes on that house are $4,000 for the year, and you now need to write a check for $2,000 you didn't expect? Not good, not cool. We want you to know about this up front. So whatever property you're looking at, budget for about half the year's taxes as a cash expense. Insurance. Maybe you've had tenants insurance, but now you're going to need homeowners insurance. That's different, usually more expensive, and you have to have it in place before your mortgage funds will be sent by your bank to your lawyer. So you have to be dealing with that up front. What about an appraiser? Sometimes the lender will pay for an appraiser, but the lender is going to want to know that the house that they are funding is worth what you're paying. So there can be appraisal fees. Talk to your lender about that. Lawyer, again, depending on how complex your transaction is, you've got legal costs. Property inspection. Even if you're buying a condo, what if you're buying a townhouse and you're responsible for the furnace? You might want to have that inspected as well. That's usually about a $400 or $500 expense. Well worth it, but still an expense. What about furniture? Appliances. Again, not every property has the appliances in place, or maybe you want new ones. When you move in, you might discover, we need some new bookshelves even. One quick trip to IKEA can easily add up to $1,000. So you want to leave yourself some funds for that. And just the moving expenses, whether you hire professional movers or you rent a truck, you pay some teenagers to help you. There's costs there. Now, if maybe you're moving from an apartment to a single family home, do you own a lawnmower? What about all that kind of equipment? Do you have it? And again, are you going to be doing some renovations? If you're going to just paint one room, that's not too expensive, but what if you decide to paint the whole house or have it painted? You just want to think about these cash expenditures, and you want to budget for them. You don't want to ignore them. You don't want to have it be an expensive, unpleasant surprise at the end of the day. The other thing I want you to consider is ongoing costs. You might be able to afford to buy the house, but can you afford to heat it? What about property maintenance, taxes, utilities? You want to have an idea of what those costs are and budget for that appropriately. Want to have you avoid financial surprises. And mistake number 5, thinking you don't need any help. Here's know-it-all Nick. How hard can it be to buy a house? I know what I like. I'm no pushover. I've got this. No one's going to tell me what to do. I'm going to take charge and do this myself. Well, you know what? Maybe you can do it on your own. I would never say to someone you can't, but the odds are you're going to come out much further ahead by getting some professional assistance. After all, you're a pro at what you do in your career. And the way I look at it is I wouldn't do my own dentistry. I just look at that as being too risky and potentially pretty painful. So unless you're an expert in real property reports, condo documents, estoppel certificates, easements, encroachments, conditions, additional terms, waivers, non-waivers, you're much better off to have a pro watching your back. I think it's fine to be a do-it-yourselfer for some painting jobs around the house in your guest room or something like that, but I don't recommend it when you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars because the mistakes can be just too costly. Nick here thinks he's going to save money. I firmly believe, and the reason I'm in this profession after 20 years, and the reason my team is in this profession, is that we can not just save you time and stress, that we can also save you money and help you make money by making better choices, better financial investments in the real estate that you purchase. So the 5 biggest buyer mistakes, in my opinion, are, first of all, waiting too long to buy. Waiting for the wrong reasons is really what I'm talking about. Waiting because you're not thinking through and crunching the numbers and looking at how much you'd have to save just to keep up. Not setting an achievable goal. Not starting out with something that really can be accomplished. Looking for something that doesn't exist, waiting and waiting while the market is rising. Deciding purely on emotion. I want to see a big grin on our buyers' faces when they make that decision to write an offer on a house, but I don't want to see someone decide purely on emotion to buy or purely on emotion not to buy. Got to get some logic in there and come back to what are our goals, because you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we're going to watch your back and protect your dollars and remind you of what you said was most important. Being unrealistic about all the costs. Are you really pre-approved, or did you just make a casual call to a bank? Have you taken the time to get property approved? Because you're going to have to do it at some point. Much better to do it up front. And what about all the costs involved, from appraisers to property tax adjustments to having the condominium documents reviewed, the deposit, all those sorts of things. Are you realistic? And what about the ongoing costs of the property that you're looking at? And the biggest mistake in my mind is just thinking you don't need any help. And again, that could sound self-serving. I truly believe that whether you work with Schmidt or you work with another realtor, you need someone who's going to watch your back. This is just far, far too expensive a financial commitment, far too big an investment to take casually. Yes, it's exciting. Yes, you're going to be having fun planning the housewarming party and all of that, and thinking about your paint colors. But it's a major financial investment that will impact you and your family's financial future for years and decades to come. So call on professionals like your friends here at Schmidt to be your trusted advisors and to help you. So what's one thing you're taking away from this tonight? Okay, resale. Yep, resale. Thinking more about resale. I appreciate that, and I'm really glad that got through. That's really important. Getting over the wallpaper. Fair enough, for sure. Okay, yeah, taking the time. That's a really good point, Dave. Taking the time to create a budget for everything. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it sounds like you guys got some good things out of it, and I'm delighted. Again, like I say, whether you work with Schmidt or someone else, find someone you trust to watch your back and help you with this. And if you'd like a copy of this offer timeline, please just email learn@weselledmonton.com, and we will definitely get that off to you. It's just something that, again, our clients tell us they find tremendously helpful. Now, I am going to stick around after I turn off the recording, because I know we're going to have people have this available to listen to down the road. But I'll stick around for some Q&A for sure. But in the meantime, I'll pop up some contact information for us. Anytime that you've got a question about real estate, we are truly happy to hear from you. Email us learn@weselledmonton.com or call 780-437-2030. You will never have pressure from us. We just don't work that way. We treat our clients like family. I think you'll love our easy exit agreements, and you'll especially love our love it or leave it guarantee. We're so confident that we can guide you to a great purchasing decision that if you find in the first 12 months you live in the house you wish you would have bought something else, we'll put it back on the market, and we will not charge you the listing side of the transaction fee at all. We will work for you for free and just offer a compensation to the realtor bringing the buyer. Why? Because we're that confident that when we walk you through the 3 Ps and take our time and consult with you and guide that process, you're going to be feeling that confident and that happy with what you purchased. And our easy exit agreements, well, whether you're listing your home, whether you're hiring us to represent you as a buyer, you're always in control. Those listing agreements and those buyer representation agreements can be canceled anytime, because we feel that we have the responsibility to earn your business daily. So that's how we work, and we would be delighted and honored to chat further with you at any point in time. Feel free to get in touch with us. If you're curious about what else is coming up for webinars and online training, just visit weselledmonton.com, click on free webinars, and you'll see the information there. Hope to catch up with you on another webinar soon. And just remember, we're always here, always happy to chat real estate with you. Ciao for now.